In this video, I'm going to show you how to factor a trinomial using the Tic Tac Toe method. So we're looking at quadratic trinomials, where in this general form, A, B, and C are numbers. So this sign right here is going to tell you a lot of hints. You're looking for two binomials that when you distribute or FOIL them back together result in the trinomial. If there is a plus sign right here, that's going to tell you that the two binomials are either going to both be positive or both have a minus sign. Okay? So what you do is if there's a plus here, you look at this sign. If it's a positive, then it's the first case where they're both plus. If it's a minus, then they're both minus. Where if the sign in front of C is instead a negative, that's going to result in two binomials where one's a plus and one's a negative. That's going to give you some hints as you figure out what it equals. All right, so in the first trinomial, I'm going to show you using a low stress way, Tic Tac Toe method. What you do is you put x squared here, you put positive 56 here, so your first and your last term, and the third column is your checking column. You need to add to negative 15x. So below x squared, you fill in anything that multiplies to give you x squared. Well, that's going to be x times x. Now, our factors of positive 56, well, this could be 56 and 1. It could be 28 and 2. Could be 8 and 7. And I think I've listed all my combinations of factors. Now I get some hints from this sign here. Because it's positive, that means that my signs are the same, so I look at this one. That tells me that both of my binomials are going to be negative. I always start with the two factors that are closest, 8 and 7. It's not always going to work, but it usually does with textbook problems. And then I multiply across. X times negative 8 is negative 8x. X times negative 7 is negative 7x. This last column is my checking column. I add negative 7x plus negative 8x. It adds to negative 15x, which tells me I have my two factors. My favorite way to win in tic-tac-toe is on the diagonal. So one binomial is x minus 8. The other binomial is x minus 7. How I check it is to FOIL, for those of you that use that terminology, or distribute. First is x times x squared, outer is minus 7x, inner is minus 8x, and last is plus 56. My middle term adds to negative 15x, so I have it factored. Okay. I want to remind you that you should always be first factoring out the GCF if you can. So in this one, I think that there's a greatest common factor of 2. So if I factor that out, I get x squared minus 7x minus 18. Now, I'm going to see if I can factor this even further into two more binomials, like this, something times something. So what I'm going to do is take my trinomial and set it up on the tic-tac-toe board. X squared minus 18, and my checking term needs to add to negative 7x. Now I list factors. Things that multiply together to give me x squared would be x and x. Now, the fact that it's negative 18 means one sign is positive and the other is negative. Factors of 18 would be 18 and 1, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. And what I do is I start with the two closest together. I'm going to try positive 3 and 6. When I multiply across, this gives me 3x and negative 6x. That does not add to negative 7x. So that means I need to try something different. So rather than 3 and 6, now I'm going to try 2 and 9. So I'm going to try 2 and 9. Multiplying across gives me 2x and negative 9x. When I add, this does add to negative 7x, so I found my combination that works. If this had added to positive 7x, I would just switch the plus and the minus sign. So my one factor is x minus 9, and my other factor is x plus 2. So this right here, these three factors, are my answer. That's in factored form. Now, in this one, I start by looking to see if there's a greatest common factor I can factor out, and I don't see anything. So this is the first one where I need to have this a term is greater than 1. So I'm going to put 3y squared here, negative 7, and it needs to add to positive 20y. This is my checking column. So the way I'm going to get 3y squared would be 3y times y. Factors of negative 7 tells me one needs to be positive and the other needs to be negative. And the only factors of 7 are 7 and 1. So I'm going to put 1 and 7. I multiply across, and that gives me 3y and negative 7y. That does not add to 20y. So I'm going to erase the way I put this in, and I'm going to try switching that. I'm going to do 7 and negative 1. And I multiply across, and that gives me 21y and negative 1y. Now it adds to positive 20. So I have my two factors. The one factor is y plus 7. The other is 3y minus 1. Again, if you FOIL or distribute, or those of you that even use the box method, you can multiply out and see that you get the trinomial we started with. Final example here, 9x squared minus 13x minus 10. This time I could have multiple combinations of 9, or factors of 9 that could work for 9x squared across the top. So first, let me set it up. I have 9x squared, my middle term, or my last term goes in the middle, and then my checking term is the middle. Factors of 9x squared, well, factors of 9 could be 9 and 1 or 3 and 3. I'm going to start with 3x and 3x. This might not work. Factors of negative 10, well, I'm going to use positive and negative, and my factors of 10 would be 10 and 1 or 2 and 5. I usually start with my 2 closer together, so I'm going to start with 2 and 5. So I multiply across, and that gives me 6x and negative 15x. When I add this, this does not add to negative 13. So I'm going to erase the 2 and the 5, and I'm going to try the 10 and the 1. So if I put 10 here and 1 here, that gives me 30x and negative 3x. Well, that does not add to 13, so I need to try something else. Well, there are no other factors of 10 and 1, so it's possible that this is prime, but I need to remember back at the beginning, 3 and 3 are not my only factors of 9. I could have tried 9 and 1, so I'm going to switch and do 9x and 1x. So that means I'm going to have to try like 2 and 5 and 10 and 1 again as combinations. So I'm going to switch, and I'm going to try 2 and 5 together. So I'm going to put 2 here and 5 here, and one needs to be positive and the other needs to be negative. Now, I'm kind of doing a little bit of math in my head, so I switch my signs, I multiply across, and that gives me negative 18x and positive 5x. That, yay, adds to negative 13. So here's my one factor and here's my other. This factors into 9x plus 5 and 1x minus 2. So sometimes it takes a little bit of perseverance until you find the two factors that work. Okay, you definitely need a little more practice with this, but here's your quick tutorial to help you if you've forgotten.